Hey, all you rad dads out there.
Conversation, but I want to just give you an opportunity to tell people who are watching or listening, who are you?
My name is Sam Roberts. I'm in Montreal. I'm at home in Montreal, Quebec. I'm a musician and I'm a father of three mostly well-behaved kids. You know,
How old are your kids?
my eldest is 14. I have a 12-year-old and a 10-year-old.
Okay, so people might have seen, I know I saw last year, you did a pretty cool performance with your kids, like kind of right after um, the whole pandemic thing started, right? You had your two daughters playing violin, your son was
Mhm.
playing piano, um, and you guys played "We're All in This Together," and that was pretty kind of moving song that obviously wasn't written for that time, but made a lot of sense at that time. So your kids are into music.
Yeah, well, they're forced to be into music. I'd like I'd like to say I subscribe to the sort of just do what you feel school of parenting, but I don't. I think with especially with instruments like violin and the piano and classical music, you have to have you kind of have to have a ruthless discipline about the whole thing. And I'm sure any parents out there who've uh, tried to get their kids to practice piano after a day at school know how tough that can be. But I learned from my own parents in that respect. I'm one of four boys and four brothers, and we all took music lessons. We all played sports, and my parents somehow managed to keep all those juggling balls up in the air at all times. So I kind of feel that they set the bar pretty high on that front, and I wasn't gonna, you know, cave to the pressure that your kids put back on you saying, I don't want to do this, I don't want to play the violin. And that moment of filming that song was actually, more than just sort of sharing it with people out there. It was I, I don't want to say one of satisfaction for all of us, but kind of a culmination of years worth of effort. And and you say, for me it was a chance to show, because it's something I get to live through every day playing music, to sort of show where all that effort can lead you. And I think it actually dawned on them that those hours of practice are always worthwhile. So that's what I'd like to think as a parent anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's pretty impressive. It's pretty cool, right? Like you've got three talented children there.
Well,
Um,
full disclosure, though, sorry to interrupt, but full disclosure, the band has broken up.
oh no.
We're Yeah, we took, that what you saw was like take 350. And after that, we just realized that, there were too many conflicts of personalities and things like
Yeah.
that. They wanted only blue M&Ms in the backstage
The green
rider and
room.
all of that stuff. So yeah, we just decided to go our separate ways, you know, for the health of the family.
Smash the violin and walk out.
That was it. Oh yeah, there's no, yeah,
This is over, Dad.
that's it.
Well, that's pretty cool. It's neat that you kind of made a conscious effort to have music be a part of their lives as they're growing up. So is that sort of challenging in the beginning? Like it probably isn't. I'm just guessing here, but probably isn't as bad now. But getting little kids to I don't know when they started playing, but getting little kids to practice and be interested in doing that is probably pretty tough.
Yeah, it's really tough, but it is something I now feel, in hindsight, I'm very passionate about uh, that relationship between a parent and a child and music at an as early an age as possible, and how important that is to a kid's musical upbringing. And in my mind, obviously, contributing to a sort of broad, well-rounded education. Music is always uh, kind of pushed off to the side and seen as not even secondary most of the time, but off some sort of magical land. But it takes very practical tools and skills to make it work. And one of those, again, as a parent, is just finding the patience,
Mm-hmm.
finding the daily discipline to make your kids practice. It could be 5 or 10 minutes at the beginning, but eventually you have to realize that that has to increase if your kid's going to ever get something back from the instrument that they're putting this time into. And once you get past a certain, you know, point, tipping point, then they start to feel, you know, that feedback and that beautiful
That
feeling that
reward,
playing
yeah.
music brings. But it takes a long time to get there. And yeah, I think you have to have a very deep well of like I said, patience. But ultimately you're giving a child, in my mind, one of the greatest gifts you can, which is to be able to play music uh, their entire lives, you
Right.
know. And we were talking before about mental health and identity, and in my mind, or in my experience over the years, and I'm not just talking about sort of presenting it to the public, but the times that I've gone back, whether just to my room or gone to a quiet place and picked up an instrument, and that I don't want to even call it an escape. It's almost the opposite of an escape. It's just a different kind of engagement, actually, where you go and you're just completely wrapped up in this thing. Tends to put a lot of other things in your life into perspective. So yeah, I think it's as a sort of family venture, then it's just the investment in that time uh, is going to sort of pay your kids back for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, and what a neat way for like you guys to all sort of bond too. Like, you know, that point where you can start playing together a little bit, or the
Mhm.
kids playing together. That's that's pretty amazing to see.
Yeah, I think, you know, that again, filming that video was one of the first time. We're not like a family jam band. We don't sit around at the dinner table and have kitchen parties all the time at all.
What?
To be quite honest with you, I know it's you know, but maybe one day. But just to do it that, even just that one time, I think we did it twice actually, uh, was was very sort of was profoundly meaningful that way. But you know, I mean, the reality is not it's not all sort of uh, laughter. There's a lot of tears when it comes to playing music, you know,
Yeah.
and you have to sort of coax it out of people in a lot of ways. And there's a lot of, you know, tantrums, and I don't want to do it, and you know, why do I have to play this stupid piano or whatever it is. But you know, as with all things, you just have to persevere.
Yeah. So this is a Rad Dad show. Do you consider yourself a rad dad?
I mean, it's sort of built. I mean, there's the on paper, yes. You know, I play
Okay.
in a rock and roll band for a living. I mean, it's hard not. I can't just say. I can't say no,
Right.
because it's in my job description to be a rad dad. You
Right.
know, I think being a good dad is more the challenge. And I think the fact that, again, what my job is, and the pull that it has on you away from your family life, and how you have to learn to mitigate that, and to be able to clearly sort of uh, it's almost like both things demand 100% of you,
Right.
which mathematically doesn't
Doesn't
make a
work
whole lot
out.
of sense. No, but it's, you know, and I think a lot of people out there, that's how they feel about their, you know, their career versus their family life. And I think the biggest challenge for me in trying to be a rad dad has actually been to yeah, strike a balance between the two things. And that takes a lot. It takes us the, you know, very supportive wife in this case, and you know, who is, yeah, you know, always there to sort of, it's not fill the void when I'm gone, but sort of take the
Steer
reins
the
and
ship.
run with it. And exactly, and I know, because I have to know when I go, and you know, when I go to work, if I go out on tour, that I don't feel like I'm abandoning everyone, you know, in the pursuit of this
Yeah.
other passion.
Are there strategies that you guys use in your family to kind of deal with that, you know, being away, you know, times when you have to work? You probably, I mean, even when you're at home, I read an interview where you had talked about, um, like, you go down to the basement or wherever it is, and you have to work on writing or, demoing or whatever you have to do. Like, how do you achieve that balance?
Yeah. There's I mean, if it's recording at home, it's the get the hell out of here working strategy. But but when I'm on tour, I think, my wife and I have been together for a really, really long time, almost 30 years. So we've grown into this life since the entire, almost our entire relationship, and we kind of use that as a way of, managing this whole sort of back and forth once kids came into the picture. And I mean, these days the kids, I don't want to say they don't notice, but sometimes I'll come back after being gone for a couple of weeks and oh, Dad, you're back, where were you, and it's not this sort of tearful homecoming that I kind of hope for sometimes. But certainly when they were kids, and like younger kids, they would get upset if I had to go for too long, uh, and also I really look forward to it when I came home. And I love that, sitting in a cab on the way home from an airport or something like that, and just this building sense of anticipation that you're going to see them again. And those those days had both things. They had this sort of these crazy extremes, I suppose, of missing and then coming home, and then the celebration was equally as intense. And I think for myself anyway, my strategy, as as you say, was to just when you're there, be there all the way. Don't have half of your mind still out in Edmonton, at the Jubilee on stage, when you're at home. Be there and throw yourself into it as wholeheartedly as you possibly can. And by doing that, I always knew that when I was away, yeah, okay, that hurts, but when I come back, I'm going to be there all the time.
Right.
And that was I started to see it as an opportunity to do all these things, to go to ballet lessons in the afternoon, to pick up from school, to drop off at school, to uh, music lessons, sports, and all these things. So it was in the end, it ended up being a positive thing, I think.
Yeah, you find those silver linings in your situation, right? Everybody's situation is a little bit different, and everybody's concept of balance and how they achieve that's going to be a little bit different, but you have to find a way to make it work, right? Families do
Yeah,
that.
no, absolutely.
How has becoming a father changed you? I'm taking you back quite a while, 14 years, but
Hmm.
what's different about you after having kids?
I mean, it's so hard to say now because it's so wrapped up in my whole sense of who I am, and I have to say that even before I wanted to become a parent so badly. It
Okay.
was just always it was what it wasn't just this sort of accidental happening. And I guess for somebody in my line of work, it can be, as we said, all consuming, and family, or the idea of having a family, can be pushed to the side. But it was never like that for me. We were at the kind of at the steepest point of our trajectory as a band when decided that, well, my wife and I decided that it was time to have kids. And because it wasn't just about where's the band at, it was where are we at in our lives. And
Right.
it was already at a point where we thought, yeah, we should be having a family now. And so I don't think of myself as different pre and post parenting, because before that we were just thinking, oh, how big a family, where are we going to live, you know what are they going to be like, what are they, we were already in that mode. and
Yeah.
and and now I think if anything, you have to learn to be a little bit elastic and fluid in your in your approach to all things as a parent. And I think that's a skill that I'm trying to develop, is to not to have too many hard lines when it comes to defining who you think your kids ought to be, defining how you think your relationship should be. you know, with them.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that again, I'm working on it all the time, but um, yeah, liquidity, fluidity,
Yeah.
rolling with it.
Yeah. So a lot of people talk about that, like that maybe loss of control, or, you know, having less control, I guess. And
Mhm.
just you need to kind of learn how to roll with that, and and embrace that,
Yeah,
right, as a parent.
yeah.
Like, there's no way you can control everything.
No, it's exactly right, and I think that you have to be okay with that.
Yeah.
I mean, but as you know, that applies to so many things in life too. It's just sort of
Yeah.
the, the easing up of that expectation of being able to solve every single, problem that comes your way.
Yeah. Sounds like you guys were pretty prepared, mentally, for
Mhm.
um, the concept of having kids. And did you have any fears about becoming a dad?
Oh, sure, tons. I mean, you just don't know if you're going to be good at the job or not. I mean, you have to come at it from a place of love,
Hmm.
and if you do that, I think it's pretty hard to go wrong. Um, but that being said, I think there's so many things when it comes to the deeper you get into education as well, with your kids, and trying to find an extra gear of patience and understanding, and also the idea of just expectation. You know, is this your life or is it their life that we're
Right.
talking about?
Yeah.
And I think that's a very blurry line, and it's actually quite an amazing physical and mental thing to feel when you're watching your kid play soccer for the first time, and it's like you're on the field,
Yeah.
in a way that nothing else in the world. You're not prepared for this in any way, but you're literally living. If my daughter's playing the violin, it's like I'm playing the violin, and you have to realize at some point that you need to pull back from that feeling and know this is their life. You're there to support them. You're not there to sort of help orchestrate this perfect existence for them,
Well, and it's a push and pull, right? Because
yeah.
there are some times when you need to step in and give that direction and set them on
Mhm.
a course, but there's other
It's
times
just
you need to let them.
knowing when,
Yeah.
knowing when. And that's I think that's the hardest thing, is just sort of, is this a time where I need to lay down some guidelines, or is this a time where I need to pull back and just listen? And man, yeah, I
Yeah.
definitely don't have all the
If
in
someone had
that
the
department.
answer on
Yeah,
how to do that, I mean,
exactly.
yeah. Um, you talked a little bit about your relationship and growing up with your parents. So are you able to talk a little bit about your relationship with your dad, and maybe more specifically, like, was there anything about your kind of upbringing, um, and your relationship with your dad that you've kind of brought into parenting or considered in your own parenting style?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I had my dad was very involved in my upbringing. He was our soccer coach, was a local community soccer coach for my entire childhood. Um, Tirelessly drove us, my brothers and I, I mean, a machine of a dad, basically,
Hmm.
like, just, and able to shoulder the burden without showing the strain.
Wow.
And that's something that I try to do, but I'm nowhere near as good at it as he is. He's still like that to this day. In fact, I feel like he's still accelerating in that department. Um, where I think that both him and I would acknowledge, there were shortcomings it's just communication more than anything. We just didn't talk about feelings. We didn't talk about, we didn't have like it wasn't overtly affection driven. The affection was there, obviously, and the fun was there, and I think that I came to equate the two things very closely. It's just sort of going out and throwing the baseball in the backyard and all that. That was our way, rather than
Yeah.
hugs and kisses and, and, all of that. And I feel like, you know, that to me is something that I've tried to sort of address in my own relationship with my kids, especially with my son. You know, who you know, it's so easy to fall into that pattern of, you know, pat on the back, and I just, you know, I don't, you know, I want it to be gentler than that too. You know.
Yeah,
Um,
we talked a little bit before about sort of, you know, traditional roles of dads and men, and you know, I think it
mhm,
ties into the concept of masculinity and all that kind of stuff, and that's all kind of changing right now. So I think that's a little bit of what you're kind of describing here, is maybe having a bit more, being a bit more in tune with your emotional connection,
mhm.
right, with your
Yeah,
child.
it's true. I didn't even think of it at the time when I was a kid.
Right,
It's just because that's the way it was.
right.
You didn't have that kind of relationship with your dad, you know, necessarily. Uh, it was more to sort of, uh, I don't know. It happened in a more, it was action based in that, but less emotional, less. Whereas now you see an opportunity to have that kind of connection with your kid, and I feel like it's a great step in the right direction when it comes to, you know, how people interact with each other, especially how parents interact with their kids. You know, that being said too, I'm also not super just permissive as a parent, and I learned that from my dad. You know, I set some pretty, you know, uh, I set boundaries in my kids' lives, and I grew up that way, and I still feel like that's important. Not just sort of having everything be like, oh well, if it makes you feel good, do it. Well, you know, I mean, I don't, yeah, I don't subscribe to that really.
Yeah, it's that's always a tough one, right? Because you talked also about the importance of fun. And so it can be tough to walk that balance of fun dad versus these are my expectations for you. These are the boundaries.
For sure, for sure. I mean, it's not without gray area, that's for sure. And you have to learn. Each kid is also different. You can't just sort of have a blanket set of expectations or boundaries for the kids. You know, all three of my kids, they all excel and need help in different departments. You know.
Yeah.
Um,
You talked about fun. We've talked a little bit about fun. What are some of the most rewarding aspects of being a dad to you?
I mean, just uh, the unconditional love that you get back from your kids. You know, I mean, there's no greater gift that I can think of than that. There are so many other things. Again, just small pleasure and enjoyment that you get from different things, but really, it's that knowing that you mean that much to another person gives me incredible fuel for living. You know, and it's hard, as you know, as every parent feels, it's hard to describe, you know, and I want them to feel the same way about me. I mean, that I give them that feeling too, that no matter what, um, they're the most important people in my lives, and I'm going to do everything for them. So it's uh it's difficult to come across that level of emotional connection with anything or anyone
Yeah.
uh, outside of your kids. You know, it's not impossible, obviously, that's for sure, but yeah.
There's something special about that bond. You know, lots of
Mhm.
people talk about that kind of that you know, whatever is related to your DNA or whatever it is, but there's something special about that, right? Like between a
Yeah,
child.
you know, I don't dig too much into what that is or why. It's again, in my mind, the word unconditional is sort of, it just it's not something that sort of needs scientific
Right.
measurement in a way. It's just uh it's a beautiful feeling, you know. I mean, and makes
Yeah.
you want to get up every day, you know.
I love that. What's next for you? I know we're kind of like, you know, looks like with the pandemic and the vaccines,
Hmm.
I had a look like Quebec, it seems like you guys are on the decline in terms of cases and things like that. Like
Yeah.
what's next for Sam Roberts and Sam Roberts Band?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a rough go for everybody, obviously, but I feel like we're weathering the storm. It's the storm isn't over, but uh, all we can do is turn back to the things that we know, and for us, that's making music, and again, there's a great deal of energy that comes out of that process, and also ideas, about where to go, what to do, what's around the next corner, and it all has to come from that creative process. So we put out a record towards the end of 2020, and now it's time to get back to the drawing board and see what else is lying there waiting for us.
Well, and you wouldn't have had much of a probably any chance to tour that record, right? So that's
No, so that feels like unfinished business for
yeah.
sure, and I think that we're going to be out there like I don't know, like a horse at a rate, and when the gate lifts, it's
Yep.
just like you're already charging 100 miles an hour. It's like that's how we all feel right now. It's just it's I think we're past frustration almost. It's just wanting to get out there.
Excitement.
Excitement. So
yeah, awesome. Well, I want to thank you so much for your time this morning.
It's been a pleasure,
Yeah,
and I'm really glad to talk about something that's not the usual interview sort of material, and I do think it's really important. So to all the dads out there listening to this, and the moms and the kids, just family is the most important thing, and hopefully see you guys in Edmonton soon.
Yeah, I hope so too. We'll get you a shirt or something like that.
Love it, man.
Okay, awesome.
Thanks for having me on.